What is up? Welcome to the It To Hoover podcast. I think Jake Nichols and I, my co-hosts, have lost track of how many podcasts we're on. But Jake Nichols, what is up? How is the It To Hoover? How is SEC baseball going for you?
Man, it's going well. As you might imagine, being able to cover the undisputed number one team in the country is pretty fun. Obviously, Tennessee lived up to it against Western Carolina, but man, these guys are rocking and rolling and don't look to be stopping anytime soon.
Dude, let's just talk about that Ole Miss and Tennessee series. Tennessee went down to Oxford. They swept the number one ranked Ole Miss Rebels, and they did it in a fashion that sent a statement and sent shockwaves across the entire college baseball world. What were your takeaways as a Tennessee media guy from that series, and how do you expect the Volunteers to get ready for the Vanderbilt Commodores this weekend?
So I thought Tennessee would take the series. Let me say that and preface it with that. I thought each team would win a game. I didn't think they would get a sweep. And I absolutely did not think that they would blow the doors off Ole Miss the way they did. I mean, 12-1 and 10-3 before winning 4-3 on Sunday. Like, are you kidding me? You just come into Oxford and absolutely give Ole Miss a deer in the headlights look, which honestly I thought was what Dylan DeLucia looked like Saturday night after they beat him for the second night in a row. But yeah, just a statement win. No more of the talk about Lindsey Nelson Stadium being a small park, because these guys were hitting bombs for all of Friday night, 5 home runs, and then Saturday, obviously you go small ball when you need to, 10 runs on 12 hits, and then Sunday getting it done with the pitching, grinding it out with Drew Beam on the mound, and then Redmond Walsh closing it out. And throughout, we have continued to see staples of what this Tennessee team has been about, that they're consistent and that they have swagger. You don't see another team that puts in 104-mile-an-hour Ben Joyce already up 10-0 in Oxford. So we have continued to see this team's personality come out in a big way, and obviously they are only getting stronger. Blade Tidwell made his season debut against Western Carolina after battling back from a bit of shoulder soreness that had sidelined him for this season so far. And I know he was excited to get back out there and kind of found his groove a little bit, gave up a run real quick, but then settled in yesterday. So it's good to see him getting back out there. And man, the more guys you have in the rotation for pitching, the more dangerous this Tennessee team is going to be, because this staff is already just, unbelievable. And, they're getting it done at the plate as well, leading the country in just so many different facets, in fielding and in pitching statistics, and then in on base percentage, in batting average, and home runs, just almost everything you can imagine. Tennessee is, I think, number one or near the top of the statistic list. So these guys are a very deserving undisputed number one, which you rarely see nowadays. But it has been absolutely wild to see the steps that they've taken this season after, kind of creeping into Omaha last year, if you want to say that.
What was so crazy to me, Jake, is that was the first time I saw Tennessee play in 2 seasons. I had not seen Tennessee play. I didn't even know what to expect. But what was so crazy to me was your starting pitchers at the University of Tennessee are throwing mid to high 90s. And then you bring in your freaking bullpen, and 2 out of the 3 guys that I saw this weekend were hitting either high 90s or in the hundreds with Ben Joyce. Like, I was like, this is by far the best pitching staff, not only in the Southeastern Conference, but in the whole country. Like, that was It was mind blowing. And then when I talked, obviously you weren't out in Oxford, you were up in Oxford, so you were watching TV. But when I talked to Vitello, I think it was on Saturday night after their blowout win over Ole Miss, and I was like, what is it? Like, what does this make this team like tick? Like, I know you guys love being the underdog, and he was like, we basically just like going out there and shutting people up. Like, that was kind of what I took away from Vitello without him actually saying that. And I think you see that confidence. It's not cockiness, because everybody likes to confuse cockiness and confidence. But this Tennessee baseball team has a confidence that we only saw last year in Mississippi State when Mississippi State had their magical season. It really, really feels like Tennessee's on the verge of something very special up there at Lindsey Nelson Stadium in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, to say the least. They've only got one loss on the season to Texas in Houston. And if they win against Vanderbilt on Friday night, they will have officially broken the record for most consecutive wins in program history with 17.
Which is unbelievable. Jake, jumping over to Ole Miss, you and I were talking about this before we came on. You look at the Ole Miss game, though, they only have one guy named as a starting pitcher this weekend, and that's Dylan DeLucia. And that's a pitcher that has a 6.28 ERA, has been very inconsistent for Ole Miss. But I think the panic button is starting to get pushed a little bit there in Oxford as the pitching staff seems to implode itself and to kind of explode up on the Rebels and Mike Bianco right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they're going in to play a Kentucky team that has been pretty good. So I think that that it could be a very intriguing matchup this weekend up there in Lexington, just given how Kentucky's played and just, given the fact that, like you said, this is an Ole Miss team that's starting to press the panic button a little bit. They obviously bounced back. And I think probably a little pissed off, and rightfully so, after that Tennessee series. Came back to beat North Alabama 20-3 in 7 innings. But yeah, up there this weekend, it should be really interesting given the way this Ole Miss pitching staff has gone. And, we'll see if they can come out stronger than they did against Tennessee, because, those first 2 nights, let's face it, the Rebels were dead flat. And, they'll have to come out with something stronger, especially with what Kentucky's produced so far this year, because I know those cats like their baseball too.
That's the thing about Kentucky is nobody's talking about the Wildcats, but yet they show up each and every game and they look competitive. They took 2 out of 3
Mm-hmm.
against Georgia this past weekend and a massive, massive win for the Wildcats.
Yep.
And honestly, Kentucky's right there on the edge of breaking inside the top 25. It really feels like that team in 2016 where Kentucky made the Super Regionals. They were underseeded. They had to travel up to Gary, Indiana, I think, to take on – oh gosh, I think it was Purdue or somebody in that regional up there. And they got all the way to the Super Regional, game 3 of the Super Regionals, and Kentucky was on the verge of getting to Omaha. That was a group of guys that was underrated. They were underseeded, and they came into the NCAA tournament hot and ready. This really feels like another deja vu for Nick Mingione and his wild. And the thing about that series, what's so crazy, and we'll talk about the other series after this, but what's so crazy about the series with Kentucky and Ole Miss is Ole Miss has everything to lose. Ole Miss has everything to lose. Right now, they are falling in the rankings. Right now, they're at number 8 in the rankings. Some polls have even them as low as 12 in the rankings. Kentucky, nobody's picking them to win. Nobody's picking Nick Mingione's Kentucky Wildcat team to win. They get a win. They get a series win over Ole Miss this weekend. We could really be talking about Kentucky getting a double bye in the SEC tournament down there in Hoover.
That's very true.
I mean, it is on the verge. But looking across the SEC right now, you've got Georgia and Florida going on right now. Georgia's got a 4-2 lead there on Thursday night there in Athens. Georgia's a team, and Florida also heading into this matchup, this matchup between the two. They've got a lot to prove. Last weekend, Florida took a loss to LSU. Georgia's coming into the series after losing to Kentucky. Out of this matchup, what are you most excited about seeing?
I think I am most excited just about seeing whether Georgia can last. I mean, just given what Florida has produced lately, and I mean, I think it should be really interesting. I'm sorry.
Like Kentucky. Georgia's built like Kentucky. They have one really good pitcher, but they've got a really good middle lineup. And it just, I don't know. This is such a big weekend for a lot of programs. Auburn and LSU, again, another big matchup. Auburn sitting here at 17-8 on a Thursday night. They're playing LSU, top 13 team in the country. Auburn, like Kentucky, is on the verge of cracking into the top 25. And it's just a lot of great baseball. Jake, what have been your takeaways overall from the last 2 weeks of SEC baseball?
I think one of the greatest things is, one of the teams that we haven't touched on yet, and just that what has been, I don't think one of the biggest surprises now that they're well into the season, but at least at first, is that Mississippi State has just continued to struggle. They're only 500 in conference play. They're 16-10 overall. I mean, obviously, having lost Landon Sims earlier this year, that's a huge blow. But man, the Bulldogs just cannot get it together, and it's so shocking still thinking about the fact that so many were picking them to be able to do so well again. I know they lost a lot from last year, but I mean, did anyone really expect them to be this mediocre so far this season? And I think the answer to that is no.
Jake, I watched them on Tuesday night here in Memphis when they play the Memphis Tigers at AutoZone Park. You could sense the frustration. You could sense the frustration from the Mississippi State fans. You could sense the frustration from the Mississippi State players. In the bottom of the fourth, you had a ball strike call that went, for the Tigers, didn't go the Bulldogs' way. Chris Lemus comes out, argues the call, gets tossed out. There was a spark that was lit underneath the Mississippi State Bulldogs after Coach Lemus got tossed that I haven't seen from Mississippi State this season. And it really, talking to Mississippi State media guys, Stephen Robertson's one of those guys. Of course, you had Robbie Falk as one of those guys as well that I talked to in the press box there at AutoZone Park. And they were saying this is the moment. These are the moments that really make Mississippi State baseball. And so heading into this weekend, Mississippi State's got a road series against Arkansas. Mississippi State could somehow find 2 out of 3 against the Hogs and Fayetteville. We can start really talking about Mississippi State being the Mississippi State that we all expected them to be.
Yeah, and that's going to be really tough too, because I mean, Arkansas is not, I don't think up to the par of what we normally expect of them, but 19-4, still pretty close.
Yeah, and the thing, what's so crazy, Jake, is no matter who we talk about, no matter where we look in the SEC, top to bottom, this conference, baseball, football, go as far as basketball, women's and men's. But this conference is the best conference in college baseball. There is, honestly, Missouri is probably your weakest link, but would you not agree that Missouri could probably beat most of the Big Ten, most of the Pac-12, most of the American? I mean,
yeah,
that just speaks to the depths of the Southeastern Conference. We see it year in and year out, and you and I are going to be making our trip down to Hoover this May. And honestly, Jake, Tennessee's the favorite, but you and I could both probably see an opportunity where Tennessee could lose early in the tournament, and we could have a Kentucky or we could have a Ole Miss or Mississippi State make a run there in Hoover.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even last year, Tennessee fell to the losers bracket and had to rebound and claw their way back to the SEC championship after losing early. And like you said, that's what makes this team, or that's what makes this conference so dangerous, especially in neutral territories. Anybody can get it done. I mean, even like Alabama with what they've been doing, they haven't been great, but they've bounced back a couple times lately in a way that makes you think, they could be dangerous. So I think overall, like you said, just right on the nose that that anybody can get it done on any day in this conference. And that's what makes it dangerous. I mean, look at another prime example, Texas A&M, which, by the way, had a stellar post-game interview the other day if you haven't been able to watch. But yeah, it's just wild how deep this conference is, and just the fact that, it can be anybody's day at any point.
And Texas A&M beat Texas last night, or not last night, Tuesday night. I don't know if you saw that, but literally A&M went into Austin and beat the Longhorns. Like, SEC baseball is SEC baseball. And last season, you mentioned Tennessee losing early in the SEC tournament. Look what Mississippi State did. They lost their first 2 games, said screw it. Then they went on a warpath and won the national championship. I mean, and Jake, maybe because you were out in Omaha. How many teams did the SEC have in Omaha last year? 4? I think it was.
Had 3 or 4. I can't remember. It was. If it wasn't half, it was close to it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's every year. I mean, I can remember years where, like last year, it was Mississippi State and Vandy. I can remember when it was LSU in Florida, or oh gosh, who else in the SEC has made it? Because I know, let's see, LSU, Florida. There was one more All SEC. Florida and South Carolina. It was Florida and South Carolina. South Carolina's another.
Actually, I was going to say that's a perfect segue, because speaking of teams that are an enigma right now, how about the Gamecocks getting 2 of 3 at Vandy and then coming out and losing to Presbyterian?
Midweek games are weird, man. Like,
That's true. That's true.
Midweek game, like
There are so many traps too in those games too. Because even like Western Carolina, prime example yesterday. Tennessee, the Catamounts have given Tennessee fits in the past couple of years in those midweek games, kind of setting up those traps, get you into a little bit of a lull, and then you end up in a pitcher's duel or having to squeak out a win late. It wasn't the case last night, but a lot of those midweek games, like you said, they'll get you, and they certainly did for South Carolina. But man, that sets up an even more interesting question this weekend for Tennessee and Vandy and Nashville is, the fact that Vandy's coming off 2 losses against the Gamecocks and still trying to bounce back there at home, and a top 10 matchup between them and the Vols. And Mitch, right now, speaking of which, I know we talked about this a little bit off air about just all the attendance there at Hawkins Field, but you should see the ticket prices right now. They are unbelievable.
how much are they by chance? Like let me see.
It's like 200, I think.
For a baseball series, like for this weekend at Hawkins Field, it's $200.
I believe so. Let me go back and look real quick. Hang on.
Well, because I'm looking at ticket prices for future Ole Miss baseball games. Ole Miss and Mississippi State get-in prices $150.
Let's see.
Like that's SEC baseball for you.
Vanderbilt baseball tickets. Trying to pull it up. I believe I had seen 200 at one point. Okay. 150, and it jumps up quick. It goes from 150 to 175, 185, and then 213 and on up.
Good Lord. I mean, that's the price of going to the Final Four this weekend. I think the get-in price for the Final Four is like $150.
Is it that low?
It is. Like it actually, like if you go and look on, just go look on like SeatGeek. Let's see, Final Four. And like I know some of our audience is probably gonna be like, oh, why are they talking about the Final Four? But I'm just comparing the freaking prices between
for that is not as bad as I would think.
Yeah, for like a get-in price on SeatGeek right now, the lowest ticket price is $230.
Wow. And
so you equate that over to SEC baseball, where the get-in price, the like get in is $150, and the most expensive is like $300. Like that just shows you how big SEC baseball actually is. Like,
oh yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like people don't realize outside of like people like you and I, or people that don't follow college baseball, they don't realize how big college baseball is in the SEC. Like honestly and truthfully, Jake, and I know people, Kentucky fans, Tennessee fans will probably get mad at me for this, but college baseball is like 1B next to football. Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't mind having that debate, and because most SEC basketball stadiums, and I'm not talking Thompson Bowling, I'm not talking Rupp Arenas, for any Tennessee fan or any Kentucky fan blows up my mentions or blows up your mentions, no other SEC basketball stadium, with the exception of Arkansas, seats more than 11,000. Because I mean, you think about it, you got the Pavilion that seats 10, Pete Maravich Center seats 8,500, the Hump seats 10. But their baseball stadiums all seat, Swayze Field's what, 12,000? Florida is 8,000. How much is Lindsey Nelson? 5,000 or 6,000? They pack it out.
It's I think right at like 4,500, somewhere around there.
Yeah, and they pack it out every game. Mississippi State, they're like at the dud what they can, or the dude what they can actually like put into the stadium without adding seats is like 16 to 17,000, which is like freaking unheard of. Again, baseball in the SEC is just as big as football. But Jake, before we wrap up, I'm going to put you on the spot. We're going to do 3 series. I need a winner for these 3 series and why you think they're going to win. First, we'll start Tennessee Vanderbilt.
I'm going to go Tennessee. I think the confidence from this past weekend, I think that the fact that they came out and showed a statement, and I think that carries over into Nashville. And plus, I think that with Hawkins Field, with the fact that the temperature can dip there, I'm going on the Vols to be able to pull it out in what might end up being more of a pitcher's duel than people think. And I will say that Aria Gerson, I believe from the Tennessean, had a great stat earlier today. I believe that Tennessee is at 82% in allowing base runners, if that was right.
Yeah.
So if Tennessee gets into trouble, it's going to be because Vandy gets guys on base and gets Enrique Bradfield going, which he did a ton of damage last year in Knoxville. So I'm going to go with Tennessee, but I think that the Vols take 2 and Vandy gets at least 1 win.
You know, I was wrong about Tennessee last weekend. I am picking the Volunteers to win 2 out of 3. But if Vanderbilt wins, it's going to be because of the Arlington, Tennessee native and former Arlington Tiger, Tate Colwick. Tate Colwick leads the SEC in home runs. He is a power hitter. The dude has had a phenomenal season so far. If Vanderbilt finds a way to beat Tennessee this weekend, it's going to be because of Tate Colwick. But with that, I'm going with Tennessee and their pitching staff. Tennessee's pitching staff is just too freaking good. I mean, they just are. Next series up, Mississippi State will travel to Fayetteville. Who you got and why?
I'm gonna go with the Hogs in this one. I can't go against even the no fun having Dave Van Horn at home. I'm gonna go 2 out of 3 there as well.
You're not a big Dave Van Horn fan, are you?
I mean, you don't know many people that cover Tennessee that are. So
that's fair enough. I'm going Mississippi State. I'm going Mississippi State in the upset. I think what I saw in Memphis, and like I said, I could be wrong, and I have been wrong before. But what I saw in Memphis after Lemus got thrown out was a brand new Mississippi State team who felt motivated, who got timely hits. I like Mississippi State to go into Fayetteville to get an upset, and the Bulldogs take a series win over Arkansas back to Starkville. Last series, Jacob, I have you pick Kentucky and Ole Miss. To me, this is a 50-50 series. I want your take on it.
You're not going to like me. I'm going to go Ole Miss. Because I am, and I'll tell you why. I think that for the same reason that Tennessee gets it done at Vandy, because of the swagger that they generated last weekend that they've maintained, and because Tennessee can outpitch and out hit anybody, I'm going to go Ole Miss because I think that the Rebels are going to be coming out with something to prove in Lexington, and especially after essentially being slapped a la Chris Rock in Oxford on their home turf. I think they're going to come out with blood on their minds.
I'm going Ole Miss. I don't have a reason why. I'm going Ole Miss close. I'm going Ole Miss close. I think Tim Elko is the difference maker.
I would agree with that.
Tim Elko is going to be the difference. I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
And to his credit, whenever Ole Miss, not even when they made it interesting, but whenever they even got a couple runs last weekend, it was because of him.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be because of pitching, because Ole Miss has a lot to figure out there. But it's like betting against Tim Corbin. It's like betting against Van Horn. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to put a little faith in Ole Miss this weekend, but I think it's going to be close. I don't think we're going to see 12 runs to none for Ole Miss. I think it's going to be a grinded out, like 4-3, 3-2, 2-1 type ball games. But I do think Ole Miss is going to take a 2 out of 3 against Kentucky. Jake, that'll wrap it up for us tonight. Drop your Twitter handle, and then we'll call it quits.
Drop me a follow at jnichols_2121. Get everything you need to know Tennessee athletics.
Jake, it's been fun. I'll holler at you. Enjoy this weekend.